Hello, folks. I'm being joined by Louis Levi, and we are going to be singing the praises of revolutionary icon Fidel Castro. Because, you see, this great man has passed, and we thought that we'd join the chorus of world leaders who, for some reason, are saying that he's the best thing since sliced bread. How you doing, Louis?
I'm fine. I am legitimately upset. I am genuinely upset that the world has lost a great man, a great leader, a patriot of Cuba.
A fellow communist revolutionary.
Yeah, that's correct. A fellow social justice advocate.
Oh man, oh god, I can't wait to get to that part. We've got a bunch of articles lined up, and my god, this is just some of the. I just can't believe some of the things that some people will say about this man, despite the fact that his history isn't even in question. I just can't get over it. It's like, look, everyone knows what he did because the people who did it to are still alive, assuming they hadn't been killed, or like the relatives of the people are still alive.
There's a lot of Cubans in fucking Florida that hate him.
Yeah, we'll get to it. So I thought we'd start with The Guardian for some reason. Who I can't say this with a straight face. Who have given Castro a glowing eulogy. Castro obituary: revolutionary icon finally defeated by infirmity of old age. The charismatic leader of the revolution and president of Cuba is president of Cuba.
My grandmother lasted to 94. What a pussy.
I just president of Cuba. Yes, the one-party state of Cuba.
Yep.
And their president. I mean, you could more accurately term him dictator.
No, dude, come on. This is a great man. This was a revolutionary. I mean, come on. Look at the things he fought for.
Go on.
Good healthcare system. That's what I've been told. Good healthcare.
That's true.
Classic cars. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, literally, is it worth advancing into the modern era if you have to lose your classic cars?
Yeah, exactly.
If I was playing Civ, I wouldn't do it. I'd be like, no fucking way. Smartphones, fucking there for other countries. So yeah, just this whole thing is just so unbelievably positive, and so just this. I mean, every single fucking sentence is just. It's like they're writing an obituary for, like, I don't know, name a philanthropist, and don't say George Soros. Although he will probably get a biography like this as well. But yeah, Castro basically he won the hearts of everybody. Everyone thought that he was just fucking the tits, man.
Raul has some big shoes to fill.
He does, and he's been how long ago was it that Castro?
You better load the rifles and get to it.
Yeah.
He's pretty old himself. He's got to catch up.
No, there's been an embargo on Cuba for like 50 years. They use clubs these days. So the Russians would be.
They treat their own citizens like baby seals, or you're just clubbing them to death on the street.
Well, they're not going to choke them with them, are they? Of course they were clubbing them. No, I don't know. I'm talking shit. So yeah, I look at it. Russians were beguiled with him. European intellectuals took him into their hearts. I love this. Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir. Oh, they can both fuck off. Just of all the people to say, oh yeah, look, these people thought he was great. Look, if those people think he was great, I think he's bad by default. I don't even need to know anything about him. For the love of God. I mean, do you know who Simone de Beauvoir was?
I know the name, but I don't know.
She's a crazy man-hating feminist.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Literally.
High praise.
Yeah, and that they're the words of Christy Winters, noted feminist academic. So, and that was her, saying that she was a crazy man-hater. So this isn't even me trying to speak badly of her. But I love this. African revolutionaries welcomed his assistance and his advice. They're talking, I think, about the ANC. You know who the ANC are, don't you?
Possibly. I'd have to look it up.
I'm sure there was South Africa's. It's the African National Congress. I'm pretty sure they're a Marxist revolutionary party.
Yeah. Okay. Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he actually did stage a sort of Cuban intervention in Angola when the South Africans were trying to annex it. But anyway, So yeah, and obviously, the African revolutionaries welcomed his assistance, and the leaders of Latin American peasant movements were inspired by his revolution. Hugo Chavez was a big fan of, Hugo Chavez from Venezuela was a big fan, and Evo Morales in Bolivia, and we can see how well things are going in Venezuela right now. So, it's basically all America's fault that Venezuela's fallen apart. It's all America's fault that, well, I mean, I suppose a lot of it is America's fault that Cuba is so poor, but I'm sure that being a communist country didn't help.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that when you look at Cuba's history, I mean, the embargo, in my opinion, did go on for too long, considering what outreaches we have made in the past to communist countries. I mean, you could just look at China for an example.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that at this point, I mean, obviously, Fidel and Raul are going to hang on until their fucking dying day to power in that country, because they're not any kind of legitimate ideologue. They found a convenient ideology to, pin up their fucking dictatorship. But, my hope now is that, now that we actually have some outreach to Cuba, that it'll only be a matter of time before they flip and they'll just become another, capitalist country that, is liberal generally.
You think so?
I think it's on the way. They've already started to make moves to liberalize the country. And I think that once these two fuckers go, that's when you don't have the scary boogeyman to, hold up a regime, it goes pretty quick, especially if we're going to start putting, people in there to infiltrate them and start to push for reforms, which, considering how close they are to us, I imagine we're probably going to do if we haven't already.
Since you brought it up, I think it's important to emphasize how Fidel referred to the United States as just the empire. So if you want to, that in itself should give you enough of an impression of how much of a boogeyman the US was. I mean, don't get me wrong, not without reason either. I mean, the US backed the Bay of Pigs invasion. They've undoubtedly done everything they can to undermine the communist state in Cuba. So it's not without reason they refer to them as, some great evil boogeyman. But it's not been. It could have been worse. Could have been the Russians in Eastern Europe. You know what I mean? So, and it's not like they didn't provoke the Americans enough with the Cuban Missile Crisis, which they were completely on board with. And I
did you read that quote that just came out today regarding Castro and about what his opinion was of the Cuban Missile Crisis? He was all for
he was all for
going the way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The Soviets were trying to get him to install the missiles in secret, and he was like, "Well, let's just do it out in the open." And I don't think I can keep it secret. And it turned out he couldn't keep it secret, and so they did just do it out in the open.
Yeah, we're lucky that cooler heads than Castro, prevailed, because otherwise it would have been the end of the fucking world.
Yeah, exactly. He literally had the world turning on a knife edge over nuclear war, and you've got left wingers going, "Oh well, Castro was such a
he was the cheerleader.
Reformer. He was such a good guy." It's like, no, he was actually a monster who was power hungry in almost every fucking way, and I can't believe these people are overlooking that just because he's a Marxist and they are communist sympathizers or something. I don't know. I just can't get over it.
Yeah, I don't really I've heard, even when I was in college, I talked to a couple of people that were self-identified communists, and at least they were willing to decry pretty much every example of communism. Yeah, because they were all violent and they were all evil and they all did evil things in the name of ideology, and they all ended up being corruptible and not actually being what the idealists would ever consider communism. They were just totalitarian shitholes.
I think that what we should do is point out to everyone that the Cubans obviously never had real communism, and we can tell because it failed and resulted in a lot of deaths. Real communism, that by definition, real communism can't happen if it fails and there are a lot of deaths. So, it's a way of keeping communism's hands clean for it to be re-injected into another struggling economy. But anyway, so Castro's rule thus spanned nearly 5 decades, and during the Cold War, hardly a year went by without his mark being made on international politics. Now, I mean, that is just such a positive sentence for a man who literally almost started World War III. I'm just amazed at the apologetics from The Guardian. Just everything about this article, the way it's written, it's like they're giving Nelson Mandela's eulogy.
Yeah.
I just can't get over it. And so, yeah. So, and this goes on. This just goes on and on and on and on and on. And at least they finally get to the Marxism. But yeah, but this is just, oh my God, this really does go on, doesn't it? Until eventually he falls over, which is great. So let's, what do you reckon Al Jazeera
Oh
have to say?
God. We were never, okay, this is one of the things I can't stand about, like, the criticisms of the United States. We liberated more nations than we ever conquered. And when it comes to conquering, that's all of zero. We've conquered zero nations. Yes, we've conquered zero nations that we did not then liberate.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I feel like I'm talking to Adam Baldwin again.
No, I'm just saying that if you look at the different wars, we in the long run, we have definitely done more good in the world than we have done evil. Now, that is not to say that we haven't done evil.
Question, though.
That's not to say that we haven't done evil in the world. We've done evil.
That's not even the premise anyway. Have you liberated more nations than you've conquered? That was the question.
Yes.
Really? Okay,
yes.
Nations you've liberated.
You
liberated Iraq?
I'd have to pull. Yeah. I don't mean in that sense of liberation. Very modern examples are not good examples.
You liberated Hawaii from their independence.
If you look,
Guam and Puerto Rico.
If you look at Europe, if you look at the Imperial Japanese, if you look at the different nations that have existed in the world that were conquered by oppressive forces, we have liberated more nations
from their democratically elected government and installed the Shah. That was pretty liberating.
Again, if you want to, you can only you'll be able to reduce this down to two time periods between the 50s and 60s when we were doing evil shit, including to our own citizens. We experimented on our own citizens. When it came to radiation, all of that pales in comparison to all the other nations in the world that were doing evil. It pales in comparison to what the Japanese did to the Chinese and what the Japanese did to their own citizens. It pales in comparisons to what Germany and Russia and all these other nations did to their own citizens. And so when it comes down to it, like I said, we have liberated more nations than we have oppressed. And when you make the United States out to be a colonizing nation, that is factually incorrect.
Is it?
We do not have have colonies. We may have some territories. We may have some territories, but acquisition is not the same as conquering.
To be fair, though, anything west of Virginia was a colony, really, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, the United States itself was a colony until it...
Yeah, and you kept colonizing until you reached the Pacific, didn't you?
Purchasing land isn't the same as colonizing.
We're not talking about the Louisiana Purchase.
Just saying, like, annexation is not the same as colony.
We're going to move on just so you can sleep at night.
I'll sleep just fine.
That's good because you're not responsible for any of the things that happened in the past. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on with that, but I like the way you weren't going to just let it go.
No, I'm not going to let it go. We are not people can say that I've already admitted that the United States is the only superpower in the world. We are the hegemon of the world. We do act in ways that can be considered ill and cynical and, politically expedient for us at the expense of other people. But that isn't to say that you can compare us to the empires of old where we're fucking enslaving people and taking colonies and stripping entire nations of resources. It's just not an equitable comparison, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. Like I said, we can debate it another time if you want because I would win that. But it's something we can talk about another time. I'm just winding you up. Anyway, so yes. Fidel Castro's anti-colonialist legacy. The Cuban leader was an energetic sponsor of socialist movements throughout Latin America and Africa. Now, to me, obviously that's written in a really positive way, but that just sounds really ominous. But that's only because I know the history of sort of socialist movements. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's really the did it do any good in the end? I mean, to say that, like, we did our own share of bad shit in Latin America and in Africa. Well, not so much in Africa, but definitely in Latin America. But I mean, what good has quote unquote socialism done in either of those continents?
As far as I can tell, absolutely none. In fact, I mean, if anything, it seems that socialism was the absolute wrong economic system to adopt after the fall of sort of the colonial regimes. And I think that I read Why Nations Fail, and it's quite a persuasive argument that the extractive economies of these ex-Spanish colonies were, they were in a hard state anyway, because, like the term implies, they were entirely extractive. The people there were essentially enslaved and just forced to withdraw wealth from there to send back to Spain or Portugal or wherever. Whereas in North America, it was very much the sort of English landholding tradition that made it over there. And so you end up with vast disparities in the kind of countries that you see. And the adoption of socialism or communism in South America, you can see why it made sense to them, because they're like, well, we're all unbelievably impoverished.
Right.
And this is an ideology that is at least appealing to us. Whereas,
the problem is that it's simple. I mean, that's probably ultimately why it became popular, was that it's simple and that it was a radical change compared to the status quo. But I mean, if you look at the governments, or I should say the nations that have developed the most in the last 100 or so years, it's been a gradual and technology-oriented expansion. It hasn't been based on ideology.
Yeah, in fact, if anything, I think the ideology tends to just constrict things, doesn't it?
Yes.
Hold them back. Like with the Chinese, the more they want
it's what's holding them back. And when they finally threw off the shackles of that horse shit, that's when they started, booming. But I mean, it's still a fucking oligarchy. But I mean, it's a farce of a communist country.
Yeah, and so saying Castro spread, an energetic sponsor of socialism across Latin America, all I hear is just like, he just wanted to keep these people down, but he didn't even know that that's what he was doing. So I'm sure he wasn't acting in. Okay, I was going to say I'm sure he wasn't acting in bad faith, but I don't think I can actually say that.
It could have been for his own self-interest to actually spread the ideology, because they would have been ultimately nations more loyal to him than to, say, the United States or liberal nations.
Yeah, which they absolutely were, like Venezuela. I mean, Chavez called him a mentor, so he must have had quite an influence. But yeah, I don't think that he thought he was doing something bad. I'm sure he thought he was doing something good, even though
I don't even know if I'm willing to grant that. I don't even know, because I mean, you have to look at the geopolitics of it. Like, you just have to look at nations today. A good example would be Russia. And there's other nations, obviously, in the modern world. But like, if you don't have trading partners, if you don't have access to resources, it really limits what you can do. Yeah. And if you're going up against the United States, which is the superpower, I mean, you're going to be hard up. And so, but at least back then, it was, you still had the Soviet Union around, but you still had a lot less access to resources, ultimately, because you're trading with other totalitarian nations compared to, liberal trade, which, in my opinion, is a lot easier and a lot
it's
a lot more effective.
To be a lot easier. I mean, it's obvious why. And if I keep referencing Hayek, but he keeps making good points, so it's hard not to reference him. But he's absolutely right that a planned economy becomes like irreducibly complex, and so effectively ungovernable. Whereas a liberal economy, you don't need to govern it because you let it run by itself. And so I think it's a perfectly valid argument, and I think it's probably
it gives the government a lot more time to actually focus on foreign affairs and that, because they don't have to micromanage every aspect of an economy.
Oh yeah, but not just that, but you're really reaching the sort of practical limits of what human beings are really capable of. I mean, would you want to be in charge of the economic affairs of, like, in Britain, 65 million people? You know,
Yeah, especially if you're in a totalitarian regime that doesn't if it doesn't exactly, failure is not exactly rewarded.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't even thinking about that. A failure isn't rewarded, but B, because it's a totalitarian regime, you have control of everything, and you have to be in control of everything.
Right, you have to constantly be shifting to make
God.
up for the fact that you lose. Because people, when it comes to that kind of control, and it's with people are talking about, whatever's going on in the UK right now with some bill about internet porn, and the arguments that have been made are ultimately true. Is that like they can pass the most draconian shit they want to, people are still going to find a way around it. And so when you live in a totalitarian nation, it's ultimately the thing that you have to constantly be making up for, is that you can make rules and you can have enforcement, but people are constantly going to be finding ways to get around it.
Yeah, exactly. And if people are basically breaking your rules in order to engage in free trade, that every other nation seems to have grown incredibly wealthy off of, probably the rules.
And then you have to start restricting information, which Castro did not do. Castro absolutely did not limit all forms of news access and information access for the sake of retaining his dictatorship.
Against the regime or anything the regime did was just left alone.
People are talking about he's like a prison reformer. It's like, no, he killed them.
They were basically all given megaphones. And in fact, this I love this sentence, right? To some, he was an irredeemable monster who submerged Cuba into a long, dark age of tyranny and human rights violations. To others, he was a socialist Superman who brought about social equality. Yeah, fucking great.
Social equality of everyone living in power and every house being overrun by fucking cockroaches. Like,
yeah, absolutely. It's just like, come on.
Driving cars from before when my parents are even fucking born. It's like that's unbelievable. I mean, I have heard some praiseworthy things about Cuba, but it's very select things.
Well, I always find that the praiseworthy things people tell me about Cuba are not really the fault of the government. As in, like, I dated a woman who went to Cuba for a holiday. She was like, oh, the people are also friendly and I never felt in danger at any point. And I said, yeah, that's not because, communism. That's because they're good people.
Right.
It's not, that's because, must have, good moral values, good family upbringing. Nothing to do with fucking the fact they're all a bunch of commies. But, right, so, yeah, the AJ Plus article is... well, it's, again, long and incredibly positive. So, I love this one. 9 instances of Fidel Castro and Cubans helping black people fight colonialism.
It's like a BuzzFeed article on communism.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Because Fidel Castro, I mean, these things are true. So, like, he supported the War of Angolan Independence, which he did. He... provided assistance in ANC's fight against apartheid. Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that's good of him to do.
Yeah. He provided amnesty to Assata Shakur, which
isn't she the cop killer?
Yes, she is. She killed a New Jersey state trooper, but I love this. She stood up to racial oppression and injustice in the U.S., where she's still wanted for the 1973 killing of a New Jersey state trooper. Yeah, well done for standing up for that oppression. He was... I
didn't realize that you combat racial discrimination by murdering police officers in New Jersey, a northern state.
Just go to any Black Lives Matter website. That's exactly what they say. That's literally their fucking catechism at this point.
In 1973, where there was just so much racial tension around that point in time.
So I love this. He supported Black American business, right? When he came to New York in 1960 for a UN meeting, Castro got upset at the management of the hotel where he was staying, the Shelburne. Dissatisfied, the Cuban leader packed his bags and stormed out of the hotel with his entourage. They went to the Teresa Hotel in Harlem, where he thought people would be more sympathetic with his cause. He drew large crowds of Harlemites as he famously leaned out the window and waved to black residents. Right, so he wasn't really supporting them, was he? He was really having a tiff with the people who he was supposed to be staying with and needed somewhere else to stay.
Right, and the purpose of it was to look for people that would be ultimately sympathetic with his ideology, which I guess in that time period, that is a lot more tense of a time. Like, I could definitely believe that to be a time where there's a lot more racial tension.
Don't get me wrong, it was probably a political statement,
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean he had any great love for black people, and neither did the other things, to be honest.
I'm sure Che Guevara was well known for his love of black people.
Yeah, he was a fucking raging racist. And he was. And this is what people forget, is a lot of people from this sort of time period absolutely were. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there are a bunch of what was the feminists who they all talk about?
The suffragettes. There was a bunch of
there was
it
one
suffragettes or the suffragists that were the racists?
I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember. I think it was the suffragettes. They had like one of their main founders pretty much went out in a speech and said, like, you know, so long as it isn't the Negro man that, you know, is getting any fucking special rights, as long as it's just us. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm just googling it since we're on the subject. But there were apparently suffragettes.
Yeah, the Jets.
Yeah. Susan B. Anthony, that was it. Fucking nerd. But yeah, so a bunch of the early feminists were total fucking racists. So what I love about this as well is they're trying to portray Castro as some progressive, modern sort of guy. And it's like,
I don't find that surprising in the least.
I don't find that surprising, but I really think you're reaching. I don't think he was
Definitely.
I don't think he cared that the people he was helping were black. I think he cared that they might become communists.
Right.
So, but yeah, he supported black American business, of course. He backed Venezuela against U.S. sanctions. How is that helping black people?
And how's that working out?
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't see, unless they helping black people fight colonialism. Well, no, that Venezuelan people aren't black generally. Just maybe it doesn't matter.
It's for convenience. I doubt they care.
Yeah, it's just, well, they're not white. That's the important thing. They were against the white supremacy. That's the important thing. Free. Well, that's yeah. So yeah, he's a very progressive dictator. He was all on board with that. Let's not talk about his history of gay rights. So
no, don't bring that up.
Yeah,
just let that one slide by.
Even the Telegraph. The Telegraph is a conservative newspaper, and I love that we've got a picture of him with a fucking dove on his shoulder. Just
this is a guy that was calling for nuclear annihilation. Oh my god!
Look,
when you make the Russians look good, when you make the worst of the Communist Party in Russia look like fucking peaceniks.
Yeah, no. The Communist Party in Russia would at least kidnap people in the night and murder them in secret. That's the difference. You know, Castro's death squads just marched through the street in broad daylight. So yeah, as divisive in death as he was in life. Divisive, yeah. He divided the world into two categories: people who supported him and people who died.
And enemies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just fucking. He was just divisive. He was like an offensive comic.
By the way, I just gotta ask this about the guy who's talking shit from earlier. You, Sargon. How many of these fucking rags are from the United States exactly? How many of these are gonna be from the UK, where they're saying like, "Oh, he was a good man. He was a divisive man, but he was a good man."
Well,
he was a great man worth remembering.
Well,
you say that this is the Telegraph
of American
conservative outlet.
It's honestly, it's not really about the location. It's really about the ideology, isn't it? The progressive ones are all very much, well, Castro was a saint among men and dispensed communism with a touch of his finger. And then well, even then, I mean, this is meant to be a right-wing paper, and it's not really like it's not the worst article about him you could write at all. I mean, don't get me wrong, it actually does.
It's Donald Trump's tweet.
Yeah.
It's such an idiotic tweet. It's just he's dead. Thanks, Don.
Yeah. I don't watch the news anymore because I know I can't trust them. I just look at Donald Trump's Twitter feed.
Yeah, there you go.
Saying that half the news these days is sourced from Donald Trump's Twitter feed.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't see why I should bother with the MSN because of that.
It's getting better probably because of it.
At least it's making their jobs a lot easier. Did you see the other day where Chris Cuomo was trying to hold Donald Trump to account for a tweet he had said? And it's just like, dude, you're talking about a tweet. Just stop it. Nobody gives a fuck about his fucking tweet.
Well, unfortunately, the press have pretty much baked their minds into the fact where it courtesy, etiquette, and I guess I could just say access. Like those are their primary concerns. Is that they don't really care what you say so long as they have access to you, but it's under the conditions that you aren't profane and you say things that fall within acceptable boundaries for, you know, the Washington, the Beltway media, essentially. They're elite class. You can be in favor of torture. You can't be so explicit about it.
Yeah. So I really love this. And again, this is what I mean about this article. This could have been so much more scathing about Castro, but it wasn't. His intolerance of dissent was legendary, but so too was his squaring up to the giant nation to the north, something which earned him the admiration around the world. It's like, yeah, from communists, from the sort of people who run death camps. They are the sort of people who found Fidel Castro legendary.
Distinctly illiberal people.
Yeah, exactly. The people we have been fighting to defeat ideologically for the last 100 years. Fucking.
Oh my God!
I just don't understand why anyone is giving this any. Do you see what Slavoj Zizek said about him?
No, I didn't. What did he say?
He castigated the left-wing media and said that he should be forgotten.
And that guy's a Marxist. Like, what does it say? What does it say?
I don't think he is a Marxist.
What is wrong with the press?
Do you know what's interesting? In that, it was like a 7-minute interview with Russia Today that I watched literally like this afternoon. And he was saying that basically he tries to be a Marxist. And it's like, yeah, dude, I think you're failing. I think you're a terrible Marxist.
I know. He's come out recently. He said a bunch of stuff that he considered Trump to be the lesser of two evils between him and Clinton. And it's like, wow, man, like this guy has stopped giving a shit.
Dude, people always ask me if I've read any of his books and stuff. I'm like, no,
it's really dense.
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure they're really good. I just haven't done it yet. There's too much for me to get through in the meantime. And yet, every time someone something happens, someone will link me something where he said what basically I'm saying and is totally on point. Like with the Hillary thing, and I'm sure he said something about Brexit.
He's changed a bit in terms of his position on things. I've noticed just from paying attention to him a bit more. I
haven't really been following him.
Ever since people started going after him for they started policing what he was allowed to say, and he was trying to pretty much say I'm a Marxist, we should be pushing for these things, and then they come down on him like, oh, you're just a bourgeois white man. He's got nowhere else to turn. He hates political correctness.
Yeah, so he doesn't know what to do with it. It's like, okay.
So he just starts that's what leads you down the path of saying that Trump is the lesser of two evils against Hillary as a self-described Marxist.
Yeah, it's honestly though he's not a very good Marxist. He seems to make a lot of sort of liberal points, and it's just like,
yes.
Okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can call yourself a Marxist if you want, but I'm really concerned about what you're doing. What you're promoting.
Yeah, he is, for someone that is a self-described Marxist, he is very oddly liberal. But yeah,
he remarkably so, in fact, and I'm sure that he knows it as well. I mean, he must know it. But
I'm sure.
Yeah, so the world reacts to Cuba's former communist leader and revolutionary live. I'll just refresh this, see if we've got any more interesting things that people have said. And this is where it gets really bizarre, because so many Western leaders are just in favor of this guy, and I just can't get over it. I just don't understand.
The only leader that I could consider I could understand why they would soft pedal the death of him would be Obama, just because of his recent agreement and the softening.
Yeah, he's been reaching out to normalizing Cuban-U.S. relations.
Yeah, he's the only one that I can really understand soft pedaling, but it doesn't excuse the fact I still think that you can do decently when it comes to foreign relations, but still be honest about the fact that this was not a good man, and that it's better now that we are normalizing relations, and that Cuba is very slowly, even in the short time that relations have been normalized, it's becoming more liberal, just very slowly, and that should be the definite point you point out, is that for the first time in however many decades that we're now seeing liberty encroach on Cuba, for once since they overthrew the fucking government.
And if Raul Castro dies in Trump's presidency, he'll end up getting the credit for the liberalization of Cuba. So,
unless he does something stupid, which I hope Trump doesn't do. Trump would be smart just to let things proceed how they are. You know, don't listen to the fucking neocons.
To be fair, though, I get the feeling that Trump probably will let things go if they're not an obvious problem. You know, I doubt they will be. I don't think he's going to be much of an interventionist if he doesn't have to be. In fact, I think he'd just let it happen and then look for business opportunities.
That would be the smart thing to do. That's the best way to bring some kind of liberty to Cuba, would be to bring in a capitalistic economy. Because, I mean, once people are offered choices of, you know, goods to buy, that's it. You know, liberal politics will come in on their own right if you have an economy where you can actually sample other cultures, you can sample other ideologies. That's the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just don't teach social justice. That's the one part of liberal America, liberal of the West, that's wrong. We got that part wrong.
Yeah, but you know what will happen, right? If we do liberalize them and then they get social justice, they'll be like, well, no, this is just Marxism.
I don't know, man.
It'd be just like V with Eastern Europeans, and they're just like, no, we know communism when we see it. You know.
I mean, I think that Eastern Europe is definitely a lot more suspicious because of how brutal it was there, and the fact that you had like the Eastern Bloc states and how oppressed they were. I don't know.
Cubans have been enjoying such freedom, haven't they?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. I'm just afraid now that, like, with social justice as an ideology, like you call it intersectional social justice, I just fear that it's so. It has such a chameleon element to it that it will be able to deceive people, even, you know, those that suffered under brutal regimes.
Yeah, well, I think you'll find. I think they will find more resistance to it, and I think it's because honestly, I think when they start having the freedom to act as individuals and say and do what they want without government reprisals and stuff like that, anyone else trying to exercise control over them, I think they'll be very sensitive about it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
You know, and I see it from V. You know, when I'm talking to him and stuff, you can tell that's the thing about. I mean, that's the thing about I don't like as well. You know, I imagine that probably most of us are here talking about this sort of thing because we can see the obvious bid for control it is, and I'm not having that. You know, so, but yeah, I think they'll be sensitive to it, and hopefully we'll have killed it in the meantime. So,
yeah, so it won't spread there in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. But I tell you what, man, people are getting pissed off with it, like, because it's everywhere, and people don't realize just how pervasive it is. I mean, think where isn't it? You know, it's in like fucking politics, it's in academia. In fact, it's coming from academia. They're getting it into schools. They've got it into comic books, video games, films. Like, you know,
the judicial system in multiple countries.
Yeah, that's true. Canada, Jesus fucking Christ. You know. You know, literally, it's in arts, entertainment, hobbies,
science.
Yeah, it's in science, as obviously, and from
atheism, skepticism.
Yeah,
ruined completely.
Name a social movement that hasn't been ruined by it, like fucking Occupy, atheism, all that sort of stuff.
It murdered the left wing. I mean, we are dead. We are a rotting corpse.
Yeah, I mean, the Reason rally. You saw the numbers for that, right? The previous time was like 30,000. The next time they get 3,000. Like, holy shit! That is a testament to how social justice.
Yeah, they killed. There was like a huge thing not even that long ago with atheists for conventions. Those are all gone. Those are done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They used to love those. Mark.
Even gaming conventions and shit. Even like fantasy conventions and all that. They're slowly murdering all of them, because they have to enforce all these different regulations, and people don't enjoy it. And there's constant fucking things of, you know, this person raped me, this person sexually assaulted me, this place is dangerous, don't come here.
Yeah,
and
it's an inherently divisive thing. I mean, I can't believe they don't understand why they keep creating enemies everywhere. You know, everywhere you go, people hate you. Maybe it's you. You know, maybe you're the problem here. And let's not extrapolate that to any religious groups, all right, for now.
Yeah. I think that, especially in the United States, I can't really speak to the West, the rest of Europe and that, or the rest of the Western Hemisphere, especially with Canada. They seem kind of fucked. But at least here in the United States, I can say that I think once the corporations go, I think it's over. I think once the money dries up, I think that's it for at least because the Democratic Party is the only party pushing it. And I think that once the money dries up, if it dries up, that's it. It's over.
Well, I really hope so. The trick is to get them out of academia. I don't know how we're.
Oh yeah, that's the foundation. That's killing social justice. I'm just speaking specifically to political power. Unless you have people like it was like there was a news story the other day. A Sanders not advocate, surrogate was on TV, and she went on some crazy racist tirade, and it's like Jesus
white
Christ.
people, isn't it? How literally there shouldn't be any white people in the upper echelons of the Democratic Party.
Yes, the problem with the Democratic Party is that the fact that they don't have black and brown people, quote, as the entire leadership.
Yeah,
and it's like,
can you imagine? I can't imagine a way of killing a party quicker than demanding some people be excluded from leadership based on their race.
I mean, it's a continuation of their current trajectory. I mean, it changes nothing about where the Democratic Party's heading. I mean, I've said it numerous times that if things continue the way that they're going, the Democratic Party will be a minority party, not just in terms of not being able to be elected to run government, but literally a party of minorities.
Well, there is that, but it won't be a major party, and something else will come up to oppose the Republicans.
Hopefully.
Well, it's
getting to the point now where you might see the fucking Republican Party split into two parties, and the Democratic Party just turn into the fucking Labor Party.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. But okay, yeah. So let's see how world leaders reacted. Do we have Mikhail Gorbachev? Right, I imagine that he's fairly pro. Fidel stood up and strengthened his country during the harshest American blockade, when there was colossal pressure on him, and he still took his country out of this blockade to the path of independent development.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm not surprised that we would expect the Russians to be very favorable. But I think this is really interesting. Like Indian Prime Minister Castro was one of the most iconic personalities of the 20th century. India mourns the loss of such a great friend.
So was Hitler. Hitler was an iconic.
Yeah, exactly.
The 20th century. What are these fucking comments?
Jeez, I bet the Cuban exiles are furious.
Oh yeah, well they've been partying, from my understanding.
Yeah, but when they hear this, you know what I mean? They're gonna be like, "What?" So, yeah, it's just all really positive stuff.
Oh my god,
I just don't understand this. A former cricketer, Imran Khan, I don't know who that is, but today the world lost an iconic revolutionary leader, Fidel Castro, who liberated his nation from all vestiges of imperialism. Oh yes. God. He was just such a saint. It's just Saint Castro. This is the deification of Saint Castro we are seeing. Okay, so where's Trudeau's statement? French President Francois Hollande, he embodied the Cuban Revolution in the hope it raised and then in disillusionment it caused. An actor in the Cold War, he represented Cubans' pride in rejecting external domination. I think that's actually quite a sensible comment, to be fair. France, which denounced human rights violations, always contested the embargo imposed on Cuba by the US. Okay, well, there are some other human rights violations that should be talked about there, aren't there, Francois? You know, it's not just the embargo, is it?
Well, they're about to have a right-wing revolution in fucking France, so I think they're okay to be talking whatever stupid nonsense they want to.
Well, no, the thing is, he's actually right, and that is actually there are some. He does raise a good point there. It's the sort of figurehead that he became that was important. I was watching a video from I don't know, some Reuters or something, from pro-Cuban, pro-Castro Cubans who were in Cuba in mourning, and they were just talking about him like, well, we never thought he'd die, you know.
Yeah, that's usually what happens when you're dealing with a cult of personality.
The great powerful leader. I mean, literally, that's what he was saying. The great powerful leader and stuff like this. It's like, man, I can't even imagine thinking so highly of a politician. Just ever.
I can definitely. Well, I don't know about in terms of empathizing with that position, but I can definitely see it happening. I mean, that's something you've seen throughout history: is people
absolutely
falling in love with politicians.
Yeah, and they just become like an on sort of background.
Yeah, they become like a godlike figure.
Yeah, it's the construct of the commander, Fidel Castro. So yeah, but where's Trudeau's? Come on, Ken Livingstone. Fucking hell, Livingstone. Right, so Ken Livingstone was recently found himself at the center of controversy, claiming that Hitler was a Zionist.
Oh yeah, I recognize that name now.
I don't know how Adolf Hitler can be a Zionist. I think it comes from some letter or something he had with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem saying that they could extradite the Jews to Palestine. Which, I mean, that doesn't make him a Zionist. You know, that just makes him
he only wanted to expel all the Jews in Europe. He's such a fair-minded individual.
Interpreting that as support for the nation-state of Israel is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. If I just deport all the Jews, I don't care. What's the Grand Mufti going to do?
Deporting them all to the Middle East, where they're going to be very well received.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
Muslims are going to be like, no, just send them over. Come on, they're all right. Come on, they'll be okay. We'll take them.
I don't think you can interpret that as Zionism. You know, it's like, come on, that's just saying that they can just be killed elsewhere by people who literally think that's what you do with Jews. Yeah. So, you know, yeah. But yeah, so Ken Livingstone is an absolute giant of the 20th century. Yes, and so was Mao, and you know, just
so was Stalin. Stalin was a great figure in the 20th century. He led Russia to victory in World War II. He was such an iconic figure in the 20th century.
Hey, you'd recognize that moustache anywhere, wouldn't you?
Yep. Let's ask Trotsky about Stalin, see what he has to say about Stalin.
I love this. And blamed the U.S. for the restrictions on civil liberties under his leadership.
Oh, yeah.
How the fuck is the U.S. responsible for him oppressing his people?
Because we're the great evil in the world. Don't you get it? Oh, everything is our fault. Every great evil in the world is because of us.
I love it. Yeah, I'm oppressing you because the Americans are making me do it.
Exactly. Hitler was sitting there and he's like, well, you know what? Fuck it. You know, if America's going to exist, I mean, we're going all in.
Yeah, I don't want to do this, but, you know, America's existence.
I don't want to conquer Europe, but I mean, hello, America.
God damn it. Right, so...
It's 1933. What do you want me to do?
I'm honestly, I'm actually getting tired of hearing my own British politicians just... honestly, they just don't care. They just don't care about, like, the principles of anything these days.
It's weird. And that's the thing, the reason why I don't like Castro, and I sent out one tweet where I said anything about it, but it's like, you know, this was someone that was very distinctly totalitarian and illiberal. Like, you should, if you believe in any liberal principles, you should be against this guy.
Yeah. You
should just be saying, well, you know, I don't revel in the death of someone, but I'm just going to say that this guy was an illiberal piece of shit. Like, that's all it would have to be. You don't have to go on this, you know, meandering fucking paragraph on, you know, statement about how he was an iconic figure and shit. It's like,
yeah, like
so was Hitler. So was Hitler. What do you want to say?
Yeah, right. For example, right, when Vladimir Putin dies, I'm not going to say what a great man we've lost, you know? And this is me, in addition to me saying, yes, he is a great statesman, you know, and he is a great statesman. That doesn't mean he's a moral person.
Right.
You know, it doesn't mean he's a good guy. It just means in fact, that often means the opposite. It means he's very good at being a bad guy.
Right. I'm sure he is. It's the same thing you could say about like someone like Hitler being a good politician.
Yeah, you can't get, you know, you can't take control of Germany and, like, you know, move people like Hitler did without being great and skilled at something. But doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean that that person deserves a glowing eulogy when they die.
To go from where the Weimar Republic was prior to him coming into power to where it was, and, you know, not even close to the beginning of the Second World War. I mean, there was radical change.
Yeah.
Not just politically, but economically within Germany. And, you know, again, like, the guy did a lot of evil. But I still saw it. I've seen it. Like, I saw it in books when I was in college that, you know, he's still listed as one of the greatest politicians to ever live to accomplish what he had accomplished. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, in the context of doing all that in the name of unbelievable evil.
Yeah. But I mean, he was concerned about climate change, so he wasn't all bad, was
he? Yeah, he gets a pass. All right.
But this is my point.
If you have to wait, I mean, 6 million Jews, climate change. You know, you got to pick. That's how logic works.
And the thing is, though, I mean, like, how influential outside of Cuba has he actually been? I mean,
Not at all.
I mean, no, there are a few things like with Angola, the annexation of Angola by South Africa, and the working against the apartheid there. That's fairly important. But I mean, has that shaped world geopolitics?
Not at all.
I mean, maybe you could say he's had like a strong effect on South America by being a strong mentor to Venezuela, and Chavez was popular with the people and stuff, and you could suggest that maybe he had like an indirect influence there, I suppose.
Someone just tweeted at me to remind me that Time Magazine listed Hitler as their man of the year, and then they also tried to give it to Anita Sarkeesian.
No correlation. But what I like,
at least Hitler accomplished something, unlike fucking Anita.
Look, there are still Jews. He failed.
Oh my God.
If that's your mission, wipe out the Jews, and the Jews are still
oh
there.
my God!
Now they have their own nation state.
Like avoiding the Holocaust for a second, I would say that if his goal was to basically for Germany to conquer the world and there to be a 1,000-year Reich, that was definitely ultimately a failure.
Well, yeah, just complete. In fact, but yeah, what was I going to say? It wasn't about the Holocaust.
Praise about Hitler?
No. Yeah, well...
Why do I got to be the only one defending Hitler?
Okay, yeah, okay. Here's this, right? If Hitler didn't wipe out the Jews, people wouldn't think ill of him. If he didn't try to genocide people, people wouldn't think ill of him at all.
I don't know. I don't know, because you still have to account for all the totalitarian shit other than trying to wipe out an entire race of people. But
people don't give a shit about that. Nobody cares, because the people thinking about it won't have lived under Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany, so they won't be thinking about how he's a totalitarian dictator. They'll be looking at how he drew up brilliant plans to invade wherever and got screwed because of whatever.
I don't know about that. That two-sided war didn't help him.
Look at Napoleon. Napoleon's treated like he's a brilliant man, but he was, don't get me wrong, but he was responsible for millions of deaths.
Till Russia.
Not just Russia, though. Just millions of deaths all over Europe, and a lot of it was just for his own vanity, I think. That's the impression.
Yeah, probably.
Just we need to make France great again, basically. It's like, okay, is this all really necessary? I guess he must have felt it was, but yeah, it's the genocide. That's the reason, man.
I think it goes beyond that. I mean, I've read too many books based solely on definitely the Holocaust definitely played a part, but it was also the machinations of creating a totalitarian system to in fact wipe out the Jews. It wasn't just the pulling of the trigger, it was setting up the system.
Yeah,
he created an industry to murder people.
Yeah, I know, but that's the point. If he didn't create an industry to murder people,
I even if the Holocaust didn't happen or didn't happen to the extent that it did happen, I still think that Hitler would be seen as an overwhelmingly evil figure, considering the war. I mean, it wasn't hard for the greatest generation, as it were, to come home and absolutely hate Hitler, considering the hell they went through, and that's just not my role.
You end up hating the combatants. Obviously, end up with a hatred of the people they're fighting in every war. But that doesn't mean if you look back on it from a perspective of someone who didn't live through it, that you would necessarily hate that person. Things come from direct experience, but from people who don't have that direct experience, they're just going to be looking at the good things and bad things that both sides did, and they are responsible for good and bad things. And then if there's no particular thing weighting the scales in one way or another, they're not going to. I don't think they're seen as particularly evil. And what Hitler did, starting wars and stuff. Jesus Christ, loads of people start wars all the time.
Right. I think if you look at Italy, if you look at Germany, if you look at Spain, I just don't think that even now, if the Holocaust didn't happen, I still think that fascism would still be seen as bad as it was. I don't think that there would be. It wouldn't necessarily have. It wouldn't have that much emotional play as it would be if you're watching what's it? Fucking, I think it was Band of Brothers, where they the episode where they go into the concentration camp. Like that definitely has a very powerful emotional impact, but it's still there. I think that
but I think
it would have been easy to see why Nazism was terrible. I still think there would have been the animus.
I'm not suggesting it would be held up as any kind of ideal government or anything like that, but it's the attitude people have to the Nazis and to Nazi Germany and the philosophy as a whole. I think they really have it because of the genocide. Whereas if that hadn't happened, I really don't think that people would have that kind of animus towards them. I think they'd be popular in fucking board games and video games and stuff like that.
Probably. I mean, I will concede that, because ultimately one of the things that people like to point out is the style and stylization of the Nazis. I mean, you just have to look no further than Hugo Boss. And I mean, it's very easy to see, like, I will concede that there is the possibility of romanticizing the Nazis without being in favor of Nazism or in favor of the Holocaust. I will concede that, but I still think that for the overwhelming amount of people, because even to say that in America, because they were our enemy in World War II, I don't think that it would be easy to. I mean, it would be like looking at the Imperial Japanese.
Yeah,
I mean, it would still be negative.
I'm not saying that, but we're looking at the lionization of a man who just butchered his political opponents. I mean, we're actually watching this happen. And I think this is because there's for some reason some political zeitgeist for it, but B, they weren't directly involved. Like the exiled Cubans are thrilled he's dead because they have engendered, they have had this directly happen to them. And unless you've had that, I don't think it brings that kind of same level of distaste. And so I think people do end up kind of romanticizing things. Like, people romanticize ancient Sparta, man. It's like, fucking hell. Yeah. Ancient Sparta was hellish. You know, it was just an oppression state for every single member of society. But people romanticize like the Spartiates and so, however it's pronounced. Like the Homoi, the actual dudes, who had the red cloaks,
right.
300. People romanticize this, and it's like, no, they were like this oppressor class.
Yeah, I mean, people, and I brought this up to you before, that people romanticize the mob, and I like my own taste in mob movies, so I can get where I can get where you're coming from.
You see what I mean? And so the Nazis would just be another example of that if it wasn't for the Holocaust.
Fair enough.
But anyway, let's go back to Castro, who didn't even need to people love him for some reason. Putin has obviously said great things about him. Fucking hell. The name of this eminent statesman is rightly considered a symbol of a whole era in world history. The free and independent Cuba, which he and his allies built, became an influential member of the international community. It was an inspirational example for many countries and peoples. Fucking hell.
Yeah, to go on purges.
He's Russian, isn't he? He's just part of business, surely. He was a true and loyal friend of Russia. He personally invested a great deal in the establishment and development of Russian-Cuban relations, close strategic cooperation in all spheres. The strong and wise man always looked to the future with confidence. He embodied the high ideals of a politician, citizen, and patriot, truly convinced of the cause to which he devoted his entire life. His memory will always live on in Russia's
when your cause is me, it's not hard to be dedicated. I mean, you can make the thing. You could praise Hillary Clinton for the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, when you operate only in self-interest, that's something praiseworthy? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. But that is exactly the message I would expect to hear. Because you're talking to a country that you want to keep directly friendly.
Well, Russia can kiss that fucking country goodbye, and your relations now. We're gonna be there sooner or later. It's gonna be our country sooner or later.
It will. Raoul can't last that long. Fucking Ken Livingstone. Ken Livingstone mentions Hitler while defending Fidel Castro. How did that happen? Fucking Ken. Why would that come up? I have to have a look.
What was he? What was his? I know he's a politician. What was he?
He was the mayor of London.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
He just can't stop talking. Apparently. I just love this. Oh my god, I just love this so much. Of course, Fidel did things that were wrong, says the former mayor of London.
Oh my god.
How does it get to Hitler? Go on. He's mentioned Hitler when discussing the former Cuban president. Okay. He compared the country under Castro's power to Britain in the Second World War. Jesus Christ, that's a fucking terrible comparison.
I was going to say, wasn't Britain getting like the shit bombed out of it constantly for years?
Yeah, but
where it was like kind of like a hellscape more than a fucking, actual country.
Yeah, but Britain was also like the world's superpower at the time. Had the largest empire in human history at the time.
During the Second World War?
At the start of it, yeah. This is, people always forget. This is not, the British Empire disintegrated after the war.
I knew you still had colonies and everything, but I thought it was bigger prior to that point in time.
Well, I think it might have peaked at like 1922 with like some small satellite state being added or something. But it was still massive in 1939 or whatever it was it started. So fucking, I'll get it up. Hang on. To compare like that us versus Germany versus us being Cuba and America.
Yeah, that's a really weird comparison.
Yeah, A is the other way around, and B is stupid. But
I'm trying to make sense of that comparison at this point. Like now that I realize like that is a really weird comparison to make. I don't really. I don't get it. It doesn't compute for me. I don't really know where they're coming from.
Why do you need to bring up the Nazis? Just what? Why
not? It's a political discussion. You got to talk about the Nazis.
I just don't understand, Ken. Hang on, sorry. I'm just finding.
Is he like actually some kind of scholar, or is he just like a fucking idiot?
No, he's a fucking idiot. He's a fucking idiot who just won't stop talking. I just don't know why.
It's like now that he's not in office anymore, that's all he has. He has all the time in the world to just talk about the Nazis to the press.
I guess. I don't
he's just like walking through the street looking for journalists to talk to.
Okay, here's the Wikipedia. Like they've got an animated map.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. Fucking watch us.
Something's about to change. Float. We're getting close.
Yeah, you fucking feel the force, mate. Fucking redcoats.
I don't understand why Canada and fucking Australia still lick your boots. I don't get it.
They don't lick our boots.
Yeah, they do.
They come over and do our bar work. It's awesome.
The Canadians have more loyalty to fucking Britain than they do the United States, even though they shouldn't.
Good. Fuck the United States.
All they do is come over to our side of the border and cheat on their fucking taxes. Oh, you're right. Yeah. Okay, now, yeah, I definitely recognize this map. Okay, you're right. Yeah, right around that. Yeah, oh, there we go. Okay. I was going to say, there's about to be a big drop-off.
Yeah, then the war begins. But yeah, so basically Britain was a fucking massive power. I mean, it was an old power, so it was obviously, like, waning. But
I definitely say you definitely had more control over the world than any other nation.
Yeah, absolutely. We completely
you were everywhere.
Germany accessing the sea if we wanted.
Yes.
We're the best fucking navy. Germany was, they were actually being quite brave to stand up against us. But the thing is, we were like old and fat and lazy, and we'd skimped on our army, and Germany had been building up their army. So.
Right. Well, their army definitely wasn't perfect either. I mean, they relied too heavily on, I wouldn't say new technology, but beefy technology. Whereas with us, we just went for the cheap. Especially the Russians went for the numbers.
Right. Okay. So where was I? People. Yeah, Ken Livingston. Fucking why, Ken? Why? Where is the fixation coming from?
I love that face. I love that face. He's like, hey, he's like finds the group of journalists to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. Just crazy old man talks about Hitler.
he's like just some wandering old man that just like walks around the area looking for people to talk to about Hitler and the Nazis.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to talk about Hitler and Zionism?
Yeah. No. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Right. Okay. So Jeremy Corbyn.
Quotes.
Yeah. Jeremy Corbyn. Oh my God. These fucking Corbyn. You fucking communist. People are.
I'm not surprised.
he's a fucking communist sympathizer at least, all right? So he said Fidel Castro was a massive figure in the history of the whole planet. Ever since the revolution in 1959, there are stories of his heroism while living in Mexico in exile, and then the boat to Cuba and the march to Havana. All for his flaws. For all his flaws, Castro's support in Angola played a crucial role in bringing an end to apartheid in South Africa, and he will be remembered both as an internationalist and a champion of social justice.
I mean,
holy shit, you're never going to get elected, Jeremy.
Yeah. Is he, I want to preface with this question before I actually get to my response to what he just said, but is he a self-described Marxist or a self-described socialist? Or either?
He's a self-described socialist, but I think he knows that means he is a self-described Marxist.
Right. I don't really know. Like the translation isn't really great here in the United States.
He's been asked about it, and he goes, "Well, that's very interesting, actually. I mean, I haven't read as much of Karl Marx as I should, but I
find that hard to believe."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jeremy. Let's not lie to one another here. You know, I'm happy to be honest if you're happy to be honest. But yeah, so.
But I was going to say though, I love how he prefaces this, or he frames this as him having character flaws. Yeah. When it was his actions after he overthrew the government.
Yeah, exactly. If murdering people is just character flaws,
it wasn't just because he personally was like an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
And he had flagellance problems. Yeah. You know, he fucking murdered people.
But if you're saying that this is just something, this was all completely acceptable in the cause of social justice, Jeremy, then that makes me scared of what you would do.
Yeah, I honestly think that he's. Well, I mean, for him, anyways, I don't really know, but for social justice warriors, I think that with social justice warriors, if they had the political power to exterminate their enemies, they would fucking do it because they are deranged enough to want that. I don't know if they would have the bravery to pull the trigger. I'm sure some, Goonie beardman would pull the trigger, but I honestly think that for the majority of these, bourgeois dickheads,
in full effect, where you're getting your brains blown out. Well, yeah, well, she's got to sleep with me after this.
Got to get that what is it? She twink pussy? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it. Honestly, if you weren't around in Gamergate, you won't know what that is. But you could Google airports law, and it explains everything about male feminists. So the next one is George Galloway. And this is exactly what I'd expect George Galloway to say. He's a British politician, by the way, just in case.
I have heard of him before. All I've seen of him is him saying really crazy shit.
Yeah. You were the greatest man I ever met, Commandant Fidel. You were the man of the century. Hasta la victoria siempre, Orden Rip.
Rip.
What is this? So, the greatest man I ever met from George Galloway, which tells you everything you need to know about George Galloway.
Greater than Hitler? I mean,
I'm pretty sure he's anti-Zionist, so yeah, maybe he doesn't consider him greater than Hitler. But I tell you, George Galloway's a fucking interesting character because I don't know why, but I quite like George Galloway, even though he's a total prat. And I think he's wrong about almost everything. I don't know why.
All I've ever heard of him is just reading quotes that are from him and listening to clips of him where he just sounds like he's fucking insane. Like I just think that he's in, like he makes that other guy Ken Livingston look like makes him look like Professor Jason Peterson. The guy George Galloway's fucking crazy.
He is in many ways, right? But he's a great orator. And he's a fantastic rhetorician, and so it's actually quite enjoyable to hear him speaking, and he speaks with such conviction, even though what he says is just fucking batty. A lot of it's just, but he's just quite engaging, and I don't know why I find him engaging either, because he's this angry little Scottish man.
He just sounds to me. He sounds like somebody that got out of an asylum. Honestly, like, I'm not even bullshitting. He literally sounds insane. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm just saying, like, honestly, I've listened to multiple clips of him where he has spoken, and I just listened to him, and I've read quotes by him, and it's like he's crazy. He's actually crazy. And then I asked myself, like, why are they giving this guy a mic? Like, I just don't get it.
I know. I know exactly how he sounds. He's been a long politician for a long time in Britain. And yeah, he's a very bizarre person. Right. So this was one. Jean-Claude Juncker, the fucking president of the European Commission, the head man in Europe, basically. With the death of Fidel Castro, the world has lost a man who was a hero for many. He changed the course of his country and he influence reached far beyond. Fidel Castro remains one of the revolutionary figures of the 20th century. Fucking hell, what else would I expect? Just a hero to many. Was he Juncker? Just, that's it.
I mean, that honestly gives you an impression that it's a hero for him, but like, I don't really know. I mean, maybe he actually is sympathetic to totalitarianism. You never know.
Well, well, that's exactly the point. In fact, someone tweeted that directly at him, going, "I'm not surprised coming from you." It wasn't me as well. Someone got in there before I did. But fucking, and this is the thing, Juncker, right? This puts you like very much in the sort of position where you're supporting the same person as Jerry Adams, which is always something you don't want to be. He's like, I have good memories of meeting with Fidel. He was very conversant with Irish history and a good friend to the Irish people, which tells you exactly everything about Jerry Adams' entire professional life, doesn't it? You know, all he does is talk about the Irish. But I suppose that's what he would do.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jerry Adams is very well thought of here. I grew up with fucking on military bases, and we had to worry about like the fucking IRA terror threat levels because things actually happened. So it was just like, you know, these things were constantly there. So I don't really have a lot of love for anyone who supported the IRA. But again, that's because I was directly influenced by it.
The IRA didn't do nothing.
Yeah, and the fucking original.
Neither did Castro.
Oh, fucking apparently. So Donald Trump was he just tweeted out Castro is dead, but he did have a longer thing.
Yeah, he criticized him, which is refreshing to hear. I mean, I didn't expect him to say anything fucking good about him, but you know, it's nice to hear someone say something decent or rational.
Yeah. I mean, Trump condemns Castro as brutal dictator. Well, that is true.
Yeah.
You know, Trump actually aligns himself.
There's no reason to include all this fucking flowery language. You could say the guy has his place in history, but he was a brutal dictator. Boom, there you go. You can recognize the guy that he's a historical figure, but he's also a massive totalitarian piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't get the flowery language.
It's the world marks the passing of a brutal dictator who oppressed his own people for nearly 6 decades. Trump said in an statement issued after Castro's death. Fidel Castro's legacy of one of firing squads, theft, unimaginable suffering, poverty, and the denial of fundamental human rights. Fucking hell, Trump! That was bang on the mark.
I doubt he wrote that. I doubt he wrote that, but it is true. But it's good. At least someone from his administration is now, his soon-to-be administration, but his team is now, taking over for him to some degree and can lay out some clear-headed fucking statements.
Man, I reckon that it was when they were like, yeah, well, you know what? It probably won't even be Trump running it, was when they lost, because I was like, that's a good point. So we can elect Trump without really electing Trump. Exactly. The infrastructure around it will just, Trump will say something crazy and then they'll interpret it in a very mild form of populism.
They'll just take his tweets and then they'll try to come up with something better.
Yeah, they'll just tell him that's what they're doing. I think it'll just get to the point where they'll tell him what he wants to hear, and they'll just be running things sensibly.
Yeah.
But God, you couldn't make all this up, could you? And I just love Donald Trump as president, man. I would never have thought. Would never have fucking thought. But yeah, so Trump actually, and yeah, whoever wrote that, bang on point. Yeah, and there have been, I've got a few of these, I think, just to show that there have been articles critical of Fidel Castro. In the Telegraph, obviously. And
here we go.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, Trudeau. So yeah,
I haven't actually read the full thing, so go ahead.
Okay, so it is with deep sorrow I learned today the death of Cuba's longest-serving president.
Christ. Man, if only they would have put in term limits, man, it would have fixed the whole fucking thing.
No, he just kept getting elected.
Yes,
he was
just so popular with the people, man.
Fidel Castro was a larger-than-life leader who served his people for almost half a century. A legendary revolutionary and orator, Mr. Castro made significant improvements to the education and healthcare of his island nation. And this has spawned a hashtag called Trudeau eulogies, and people would
I know
I've been translating this into basically, Adolf Hitler was a very controversial figure but left a great legacy in the autobahns or something like this. So yes, that's wonderful. That's I mean, he did do this is true. While a controversial figure, both Mr. Castro's supporters and detractors recognized detractors, not victims.
No.
Recognizes
ideologues, partisan, colonialists.
Recognizes tremendous dedication and love for the Cuban people who had deep and lasting affection for El Comandante.
Oh my God.
I love this. This is amazing. This is a Prime Minister of Canada saying this. I know my father was very proud to call him a friend. Oh, what?
What the fuck?
Jesus Christ, okay. You were friends with this guy? And I had the opportunity to meet Fidel when my father passed away. It was also a real honor to meet his three sons and brother, President Raul Castro. Amazing. It's just like the Bushes, isn't it? They just keep elected in.
Yeah.
During my recent visit to Cuba. On behalf of all Canadians, Sophie and I offer our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and many supporters of Mr. Castro. Apparently, is this some sort of like community of government heads or something?
I can't imagine like that. I mean, I'd have to reread what Obama said, but I can't imagine that many politicians in the United States singing this guy's praises like that, because you would pretty much guarantee to lose fucking South Florida for forever by singing this guy's praises, because there are a lot of Cubans in Florida that fucking hate this guy.
We join the people of Cuba today in mourning the loss of this remarkable leader. Unless they live in Florida, and then they can fuck off. That is just it's just a propaganda piece, Trudeau. That whole thing is just.
See, now I can imagine he wrote that. Like with Trump, no, he didn't write that. But with this, yeah, I can imagine him actually writing that.
It's
it's very personal
difference. The phenomenal difference. I mean, this is just like, the world most possible brutal dictator who oppressed his own people for nearly 6 decades. And then Trudeau, his many supporters. Exactly. A group of people oppressed a load of other people. And he's effectively fucking acknowledging that.
One thing I don't really get is I've seen a lot of people. I know that Jeremy Scahill, who is essentially a journalist, was really getting pissed off on Twitter because he was angry at the hypocrisy towards the lack of condemnations towards the Saudi king when he died, and that he also thinks that when Henry Kissinger dies, there's going to be people singing his praises, which I think he's right about that.
There probably will be some neocons singing his praises.
And Hillary Clinton and others. I do think that you'll have, if the Democratic Party stays the same, we'll see a lot of people from the Democratic Party.
Holy shit, man. I am going to be spamming people with Hitchens videos.
Yeah, it's very obvious to see why Henry Kissinger is a piece of shit. But the problem is that, like, okay, let's just pretend like, okay, with the Saudi king, one of the cynical reasons to praise him is that it's in essence our ally. Now, I don't like the Saudis. I don't want us to be as close as the Saudis as we are, but it's understandable from a cynical, politically expedient point of view why they did what they did with the Saudi king. But with Castro, this guy was our enemy for how many decades? Like over half a century. 50. We fucking hated this guy and considered him an enemy.
Yeah, I don't know why he's become fashionable.
Yeah, I don't really understand. Like, especially in the West, especially, I mean, with America, it's one thing, but like even in the West, like, am I that, old at this point where even I can look at this and see like why it's rational to hate this guy? I mean, I could only how are you like beyond a certain year point where it's like you lived through the Cold War? You should hate this guy. This guy helped along the fucking Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
How do you praise this fucking guy?
even if you don't like hate him, like, you know, get emotional about it, you can at least like don't make him sound like a good guy. You know, don't propagandize on his behalf. Just fucking.
It takes effort to romanticize his rule in Cuba, and I just find it hard to believe that
this is why the
people in the
Florida
West
are freaking out.
Fawning. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
But yeah, the Trudeau eulogies one, where definitely fucking go through that hashtag, man. It's fucking brilliant.
How is he still elected there? I just don't get it.
Well, I don't think they've had another election yet, have they?
I'd have to look. I don't think they actually have. But are the conservatives or anyone rational in fucking Canada that incompetent?
I don't know. Honestly, Canada just seems like it's lost, man. I think we've got to accept that social justice has taken over Canada.
It's Bioware's fault. I blame them.
Yeah. No, seriously, those calls for human rights and shit, man. I watched Arch Warhammer's video on them. It's like the Canadian calls for human rights are just the most. I don't know.
They're like Sharia courts. They're weird as fuck.
Yeah, it's just like look,
they're actually judicial. They exist outside the law. It's weird.
Yeah, and it's like there is not going to be any justice that comes from any of this. You know, it's just like about how people feel. It's like, for fuck's sake, this is crazy. But
yeah.
And, oh yeah. So show this list to anyone who says Fidel Castro was a champion of social justice.
Yeah, that's easy to distinguish.
I'm going to quite enjoy this, Jeremy. I'm not going to lie. So, arbitrary detentions and short-term imprisonment. I'm not going to read through it all, but obviously you can just Google it. Political prisoners, freedom of expression. These dozens. Hang on, I've got a fucking. Cuba's repressive machinery. Human rights 40 years after the revolution. So yeah, fuck your stupid BuzzFeed article. Yeah, basically he's just like got everything. Like, the report shows that Cuba's treatment of political prisoners, it rises to the level of torture, violating Cuba's obligations and the Convention Against Torture, blah, blah, blah. Arbitrary arrest, detention and exile, detention conditions, freedom of expression, freedom of association, religious freedom. You know, Cuba is really bad on all of these things and always has been. There's Fidel Castro dead, tyranny remains in Cuba. I'm not going to go through that because there was a thing I wanted to find. Oh shit! Oh, persecution of the gays in Cuba. Yeah, there are things that happen as well. Fuck, I'd lost this fucking link. I'll try and find it. But it was about I think it was maybe it was a video, but it was about some of the Cuban exiles basically saying about how the when they fled to America, it was because their neighbors had just been gunned down in the night.
Yeah.
And it's just the more direct stuff rather than the sort of ongoing stuff, but the initial stuff that happened. But yeah, for anyone who isn't aware, it was literally like Nazi-like tactics, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was systematic extermination of political enemies or people believed to be political enemies
in front of firing squads.
Yeah.
No nonsense. And it's just like, this is a terrible regime, and I can't believe anyone is speaking well of Fidel Castro.
It's not like it got any less repressive as time went on. It stayed repressive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so much. I know that America now is within somewhat of a glass house because of the shit that we've done. But at the same time, it's like, this was a country that was so totalitarian that it actively maintained a system of excluding outside information for the sake of keeping the regime in place. It was an incredibly brutal country to live in. And, I know that people want to sort of turn this around and say, oh, it was the embargo, but it's like, we never put their ideology in place there. That was all the Castro brothers and their shit. I just don't get it.
Yeah. I just
I can't. People are glossing over an unbelievable amount of history,
and it's just convenient to do so. It's just straight down the memory hole. And then Trudeau's fucking. Oh my God, Trudeau! You couldn't have written anything more positive if you tried. And it's like,
no, I don't think so. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, just you.
It was praise. It was just praise.
Yeah.
It was just, this guy's an iconic figure and he's praiseworthy. He's a friend, for Christ's sake.
He was
a close personal family friend.
Yeah, and it's just like, look, there are Cubans who have freedom of expression, and when they live in Florida and they're cheering that he's dead because they can.
They're celebrating it.
You know, in Cuba they have like, was it like 7 days of mourning or something, or 9 days of mourning that they're having enforced, and it's like, that's the thing. You know, they're going to have it whether they like it or not. You know.
I honestly think, though, that as time goes on, I think that unless something stupid happens, you will see Western ideas, Western capitalism, and Western culture seep into the country, and I think that's what's going to destroy any sense of totalitarianism in that country.
Well, I imagine it will over time. Just the proximity to the U.S.
That's what I mean. I think that's going to hasten the process a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to get someone, well, as dogmatic as Fidel Castro in, you know, willing to oppress the people so thoroughly that nothing gets through.
You'd have to erect somebody that the American response is to do exactly what we've done in the past, which is the embargo. And I honestly think that like you haven't seen Raul, at least maybe now he does some knee-jerk thing, but he has been softening tremendously in his position on America, and we've been doing that in turn as well. So I honestly think that unless something big happens, that the whole notion of communism in Cuba, it's going to be a relic in like 40 years. Something that's like, wow, remember when Cuba we used to embargo Cuba? What? It's just going to be one of those things.
Yeah, probably. It'll probably become a popular holiday destination.
All it requires is one generation of young people that get any kind of sense of liberty, of capitalism, of, different ideals, whether it be, American culture or Western culture in general or what have you. I mean, they just need to get some semblance of, access to all this information and access to all these materials that, can make their life that much more enjoyable. And that'll be it. It'll just be like, yeah, this is way better than anything that the government currently has in place. And when those people grow up and they take over power, boom, that's it.
Yeah, but it's gonna become really touristy.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
the more capitalism that comes there, it's going to get demolished. I'm telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's going to completely change. So I don't know. Yeah, obviously that's going to be for the better, but I don't.
Because thankfully, I
suppose I got cigars.
The thing, they got more than that. They actually have some decent amount of economy that they could utilize if they had partners to trade with. But with Cuba specifically, one of the good parts of it is that they don't really have, other than the ideology is the only thing standing in place of liberty coming into that country and liberalism coming into that country. It's the only thing that's preventing it. I think that if the ideology goes away with the new generation, or just gradually with the people that are already there, I think that there's not going to be resistance as you would find in other countries such as the Middle East. I think that the Middle East is someone in particular where, the whole notion of, oh, we're just going to, kick this guy out of the place and, boom, we can just take over and liberty will just erupt. And it's like, no, I don't think it's going to happen there. I think there's going to be a lot more natural resistance.
Yeah, no, Islamism is going to erupt.
Yeah.
The desire for a caliphate is going to erupt. And then, honestly, I swear to God, on Twitter the other day, someone was like, oh, yeah, why don't you prove to me that Islam is also a political ideology? It's like, well, they keep wanting a caliphate. What the fuck do you call it?
I mean, there's literally no other way to describe that.
Yeah.
Political ideology, and that you are trying to erect this ideology into your government.
Yeah.
And it is specifically Islam.
So
yeah, that's crazy. That's just a fucking ignorant person.
Well, yeah, obviously. But it was just a bizarre question because I'd never had to justify it before, because it was like, what do you mean prove how it is? It's like, well, That's what it's asking for, you know. What do you want? It's like, I don't know, just a bizarre, like, kind of postmodernist question from an idiot. But right, okay. So, is there anything else you wanted to say about Castro at all? The general
I just,
disappointment at the way he's being lionized.
I mean, I don't really have much to say about him. I mean, he's just what was the name? What was the name of the guy that fucking the fascist in Spain? What was that guy's name?
Oh, Franco.
Franco. That's it. It's just gonna be like that. It's just gonna be, you know, it's gonna be that like it just that this interaction we just had. This guy's gonna be fucking forgotten in like 20 years. No one's gonna remember this cunt's name. And I think that the best thing that can happen to Cuba is that they become more and more liberal and they become more and more capitalistic. And hopefully without the oligarchy, I'm hoping they can skip that phase. And yeah, but I wish the people of Cuba the best, and I hope that the United States, have a great involvement with Cuba.
Well, let's hope they do. Okay, right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Take it easy.